Speaker is Professor of Institutional Economics at RMIT. He's also an adjunct fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs. He's also prone to calling people he doesn't agree with communists. And in my personal experience, that's pretty well everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, Sinclair Davidson.
So good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me, Andrew. I have to say I was very excited to see all the security people you got out there, because as far as I could work out, I am an immigrant, I'm a college professor, I'm an economics college professor, and I'm a Melbourne-based academic. All people who have had hate this very morning, so that's all very good. So what I want to talk about are a few things. First of all, I want to do some outrageous advertising for the RMIT Economics Department, where we set up a couple of years ago the Blockchain Innovation Hub. And in our Economics Department, we have got, I think it's 5 or 6 Montpellier Society members, which is, of course, the society set up by Friedrich Hayek after the Second World War to promote classical liberalism. We have got a free market group, an identifiable group of people. We've probably got the biggest single largest identifiable group of free marketeers outside of the United States. And some of our colleagues even like Donald Trump. So I'm going to put some advertising for my good friend Stephen Cates, who is somewhere in the room. There you are, Stephen. Yes, sitting right in the middle. So Art of the Impossible, a blog history of the election of Donald J. Trump as president. It's published by Connor Court, so please rush outside and ask them why they don't have any on sale, and certainly put your order in. But a magnificent history of the election of Donald Trump from a free market perspective. Okay, so what I want to talk about specifically are 2 projects that we've got on the go at RMIT at the moment. The first project we are calling Capitalism After Satoshi, and the second project we are calling Technologies of Freedom. The Technologies of Freedom project is supported by the Mancal Foundation, so thank you very much, Ron, for your generous support. Now, the argument that we're doing, and there's a brand new technology which came out in the last 10 years called blockchain, which if you're all thinking, oh my God, what is blockchain? Blockchain is very easily understood. It is linked computers come to consensus over shared data. So linked computers is the internet. Shared data, we all know, is information spreadsheets that we've got, and all these spreadsheets talk to each other at the same time. And if you understand that, you understand the blockchain. So we can move straight into the technical detail. What is important about the blockchain is that, as the economists sort of incorrectly described it, as a trust machine. What the blockchain does is it industrializes trust. Now, if we think back to the Industrial Revolution, what did we do? We industrialized energy. So we moved from a situation where humans were mostly dependent upon animal and human strength to do things, and also power sources that we now call renewables, which were astonishingly inefficient. So we moved away from that, and we actually industrialized power, and we were able to build up a magnificent civilization which we see around us today. What we've done this time is we've actually come up with a mechanism of industrializing trust. So all the expenditure, the costs that we incur in building up trustful relationships can now more or less be done by a machine. So trusted third parties are going to be creatively destroyed over time, and the great thing about this is that the single largest trusted third party in our society is government. So a lot of what government does is creating a trusted third party, an overseer, somebody you can rely on. All of those functions are going to be disrupted by the blockchain. So I'm very excited about that, because we should see a lot less government in future. But governments are smart. Governments are fighting back. Governments know that there is a problem. And so they have people that they can turn to assist them. Now, men with guns and so on and so forth, but also people like the ACCC, which is a disreputable organization which I think I have called to be shut down, along with every other Australian government agency that begins with the letter A. But anyway, so about 2 weeks ago, the ACCC brought out their digital platforms I wrote it down here. Digital Platform Inquiry. Now, this Digital Platform Inquiry was a gift from Scott Morrison to the old-style media companies. So this is a disgraceful form of crony capitalism. Now, I know a lot of people really like Scott Morrison. He won an election. I was very pleased, and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, please remember, the man is a disgusting taxer. This man has brought in taxes on the digital economy. He's expanded the GST. This man wants your money. So please don't like him too much. But the point that I'm going to get to is that we've seen the emergence, or the wide-scale emergence in our economy, of things called platform economies or digital platforms. Now, these things are what economists call two-sided markets. So we're all familiar with Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. I have them all on my phone. Same as I hope all of you have got them on your phone. We've heard of these disgraceful fangs that are going to destroy the world that we live in because of their newfangled ways of doing things. Well, in actual fact, they're not newfangled ways of doing things. A two-sided market has got two sets of customers, and they simultaneously work on both of them. So banks are a two-sided market. They've got borrowers and lenders, and they manage the relationship between the two. The media are a two-sided market. They've got two sets of customers, us, eyeballs, and advertisers, and they manage the relationship between the two. What is going to happen is these emergent platform economies, digital platforms, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, in combination with things like the blockchain, AI, Internet of Things, all this wonderful technology that we're getting, is going to disrupt current incumbents. So if you are a current incumbent, your business model is going down, you're being destroyed by the market in the way in which a capitalist economy should perform, you run to Canberra. Scott, our civilization is ending. Scott, you have to do something. Scott, please send the ACCC to do something. So what does the ACCC do? They manage something called antitrust policy. Now, antitrust policy deals with monopoly problems. Now, we heard a bit about monopoly previously, but here is the mischief around a monopoly. What it does is it restricts access and prices up to demand. So you've got to see two things happening when you have a monopoly. One, people can't come onto the market, people can't buy from you, people can't buy as much as they want, and prices must have risen. In the 1980s, the American Justice Department spent a lot of time prosecuting IBM for being a monopolist. And one of the biggest problems that they had prosecuting IBM for a monopolist is that the market for computers was expanding and the prices were coming down, which is exactly the opposite that you have when you have a monopoly problem. So this is the problem. Now, the other thing that you must have when you've got a monopoly problem is you must have barriers to entry and you must have barriers to exit. So these companies, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, what have you, worth $4 trillion, are now quite profitable, many of them. And the argument is if they are so profitable, they should be having competitors. And on many margins, they do have competitors. But the issue is there a barrier to entry there? And the answer, generally speaking, is going to be no. Are they raising prices? Well, Facebook gives away their stuff for free to us, the consumer. Google gives away their stuff for free to us, the consumer. I get tons of movies and shows and what have you from Netflix for $9 a month. And I buy books from Amazon and so on and so forth. So it's very hard to get excited about these big monopoly problems. But nonetheless, we have the stories. Why are these people a problem to us? Well, first of all, there's always think of the children. Kids might go on the internet and see things. Well, yes, adults too. Threats to national security. Yes, that's a favourite of mine because it's very hard to argue against any random threat to national security, which is why every single government agency and their dog has accessed our metadata in the last few months, which was reported in the Australian Just Week. Promote terrorism and crime. Yes. It turns out that when I see news clips of terrorists in the Middle East, they tend to be driving Toyotas. Now, nobody has ever gone to Toyota and said to them, please stop making your cars because they're promoting terrorism. My favorite, though, is the threat to our democracy. Now, the threat to our democracy works in a few ways, and I'm going to put scare quotes around our, because it's very scary. And first of all, I want to plug another one of my colleagues' books. Chris Berg, who was supposed to be here today, has flown to China to get Re-indoctrinated, no doubt, get his marching orders. Chris has flown to China, and he and Darcy Allen and Aaron Lane, three of my colleagues, are bringing out a book called Crypto Democracy, which should be out in time for Christmas. They make wonderful stocking stuffers and so on. So avoid disappointment. But the threat to our democracy works in a number of ways. How do we solve this threat to our democracy? Well, it turns out the solution to solving our democracy problem isn't that we appoint better quality candidates into Canberra, isn't that we actually vote more often and not less often, isn't that we actually have a more referenda, as I think we should do. The gay marriage vote that we had 18 months ago was a glorious success. We don't need to have politicians making decisions because we will make those decisions for ourselves. But the threat to our democracy works around we should fund the media organizations, the existing media organizations. We should make it harder for Google and Facebook to publish information. And that's just simply not a plausible story. Coming out of the ACCC thing was, we should give more money to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation to counter fake news. Guys, really, the single largest source of fake news in Australia is... So Chris Berg and I have a book out last year where we said the ABC should be privatised. Not just privatised, but given away for free to the current people who work at the ABC, because if they can make a go of it, fantastic and good on them, and if they can't, don't worry about it. And we don't have to charge them for it, because when they sell their shares, they will pay capital gains tax. So how awesome would it be to have the ABC campaigning to do away with capital gains tax? And we would save $1 billion at the same time. So win-win-win. Christina Keneally, somebody who's been mentioned in dispatches here already, made a big fuss in the Parliament about our book. So thank you, Christina, for the publicity. A whole bunch of friends of the ABC people did try to get Chris and I fired from the universities. But contrary to what you hear, universities do still believe in academic freedom and what have you, and battered that one away. So the arguments are, in order to save inefficient, outdated modes of doing things, that we should use antitrust, which is a late 19th century way of dealing with problems in the economy. And I have to say, a lot of the problems that they dealt with in the 19th century, they used antitrust, is probably a rule of law problem. Lawless behavior which occurred in the 19th century is not the sort of lawless behavior that we expect to be happening now. So using a 19th century regulatory technology to hammer 21st century solutions to and actually very innovative solutions, private sector solutions to economic problems is actually a waste of time. So there is something called the electronic markets hypothesis, which actually says that as information technology increases, we will see less and fewer third-party enforcement. We will see less hierarchy within organizations, we will see less government, and we will see more market forces actually directing resources. From a free market perspective, this is exactly what we want to have, this is exactly what we want to see, and we certainly do not want to have the ACCC getting in the way and stopping the evolution of where business is going in the remainder of the 21st century. And the other thing, of course, finally, words to the federal government and politicians in the room, do not be stupid and greedy at the same time. Okay, so what is happening right now? The Australian government is managing to be both stupid and greedy. On the one hand, wanting to tax these platforms to absolute death, regulate them to absolute death, and then say, oh my God, why is there no productivity in the Australian economy? Well, duh. And on that note, I'm happy to take questions or shuffle off the stage or... Please, Steve's book.
G'day, I'm an economics student, mature age obviously. Is Facebook Libre the answer to our ever-extending powers that the RBA governor has?
Yes. I'm a huge fan of Libre. It's not actually a blockchain solution. It's very close. It's got a permission blockchain, so it's a bit naughty and all that sort of stuff. I'm a huge fan of Libre. As it turns out, we all hate fiat currency. We think government money is bad. It's got these poor qualities and characteristics and what have you. The big advantage of government money or fiat is that it is convenient. It is actually useful to use. And so there's very little demand, or historically, there's been very little demand for a private money to displace it. But the nice thing about Libre is that it will also be very convenient. It won't be a fractionalized currency, so all we hear these stories is going to cause bank runs and what have you. That's just propaganda and lies. It will undermine government's ability to control money, which is, of course, is why they want to destroy it. Mr. Trump put out a tweet the other day saying if Facebook wants to become a bank, they should get a banking license, which seems a sensible thing to say, but in actual fact, Libre is not going to be a bank. I really love it. My mum can use WhatsApp. And if anybody can use WhatsApp, they will be able to send money using Libre. And if my mum can do it, it's going to take off like wildfire, if allowed.
Hi. I'll try not to be too technical, but there's a lot of problems that still blockchain still faces, like proof of work, and if you've got 51% and there's enough money in it, anything can be broken. And then you've got quantum computers coming up, which should be able to break the blockchain theoretically. I was just wondering, how can we let markets, because that's what they are, we're talking about variation of share markets, really grow when they're so vulnerable in the long term?
Okay, so the first issue is around mining and validation. So the argument is the mining cost of a blockchain right now is either the electricity supply of, I don't know, pick your country, Nigeria, Ireland, it always changes from time to time. There's a cost associated with that, we know what it is. My colleagues and I have also worked out that on current usage, just replacing new existing things around trust, that the blockchain economy should be worth $29 trillion. Now, my view is I'm not greedy, I just want 1% of that. So if we know right now, upside, it's going to be $29 trillion plus. We know the cost of electricity in pick your country, that's still a very profitable thing. Bearing in mind, burning electricity, depending on your view of climate change, may or may not be a problem. I think, fossil fuels keep us warm, they keep future generations warm too, so we shouldn't be complaining about that. And the other thing, quantum computers should be able to break the first generation of blockchains in 20 years' time. In 20 years' time, we might not be worrying about this. But certainly there will be an arms race at some point, and we're in arms races and other margins in the computer world already. So, yeah.
Just in regard to Libre, run by Fascist Book, why would we want to give Mark Zuckerberg and his horrible free speech suppressing company any more power? I certainly won't be using that currency because I don't want to give them any more power. I think they are a disgrace.
Two answers, because I trust Mark Zuckerberg more than I trust Philip Lowe. And secondly, because behind Facebook, Libre, there are going to be a whole bunch of other fangs bringing other currencies. So if we actually think right now the least trustworthy, and I'm going to put trustworthy in scare quotes as well, but the least trustworthy fang is coming out with a money that's actually going to undermine government control over the economy. And there's going to be heaps more.
Okay, we might leave it there. I know Sinclair thinks that you're a fantastic crowd because none of you got called communists. Ladies and gentlemen, Sinclair.
Thank you.